Welcome back to Patristic Nectar Kids. I'm Kriya Destiny of Ascetic Life of Motherhood. Got a special activity planned for you today. We are going to be celebrating the presentation of Christ, which is one of the 12 great feasts in the liturgical year. In the Orthodox Church, we have 12 special feast days, and sometimes they happen to be about the life of Christ or the Most Holy Theotokos. And today we have both of them as part of the story for the great feast. For the presentation of Christ, this is something that comes from the Gospels in Luke. And so we're going to talk about the feast day and the connection that this has with a tradition that celebrates. And I'm going to give you an activity that you can do at home together if you want, and how that connects with the feast. It's going to be great. I'm really excited. This is one of my favorite activities to do, and we do this each year for the presentation of Christ. Now, before I forget, like and subscribe for our channel so that in the future you'll see more videos like this to learn how to celebrate the feast together in the Orthodox Church, okay? The presentation of Christ, like I mentioned, it's from the Gospel of Luke. You may not recognize the name presentation, but I bet you'll recognize certain parts of this story because they have a significance in the liturgical services. And I want to point out those things, okay? So today, for our activity, we are going to be making rolled beeswax candles. Now, this is a really easy activity because all you have to do is you buy a kit. I found mine online. You can buy a kit, and with just a few simple tools, you can make your own beeswax candles. Here's a really cool part. So for the presentation of Christ, there's a tradition that's celebrated throughout the world that you take your candles to church to be blessed for the presentation of Christ. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that and why. And so these candles can be made and brought to church, and your priest will bless them. Now, not every church does that particular tradition. It's only done in local communities, but it's something that is done broadly. So I want to tell you a little bit about it. The presentation of Christ, let's talk about it, and then we'll get started with our craft, okay? So the presentation of Christ is the story of when Jesus, right after he was born, when he was 40 days old, his mother and his earthly father brought him to the temple according to the tradition, and they meet somebody very interesting while they're there. So let's back up a little bit. Before Christ was born, the Israelite people are looking for a Messiah, somebody who's going to save them. Okay, so they've known about this for a long time. And in the Old Testament, we learn that we're waiting for the coming Messiah. There's a special man named Simeon, and he received word from the Lord through an angel that he would see the coming Lord with his own very eyes. And so the day that Mary and his earthly father Joseph brought him to the temple, Saint Simeon rushed the temple. And guess who he found? He saw Jesus, and he knew this is the Messiah. So he takes him into his arms, and he's so inspired by the Holy Spirit that he sings this song. And I bet you're familiar with this. We find this in the book of Luke. Now let thy servant depart in peace according to thy word. For thine eyes have seen thy salvation, which thou hast prepared before the face of all people, to enlighten the Gentiles and the glory of thy people Israel. Okay? So he says this, now he realizes that the promise that God gave, he would see the Lord before he died. So he says, now let thy servant depart in peace according to your word. For mine eyes have seen the salvation, which is Christ himself that he's holding in his arms. Okay, it's a really beautiful story. Now, there is a significance to this as well. If you recognize the hymn that I'm telling you, you probably have heard it in church. We sing this during Great Vespers, and sometimes we say it too, okay? Instead of sing it, we'll say it. And so this is a special part of our service. We say the prayer of Saint Simeon. Another time this might come up So whenever Jesus does something, we do it too. Okay, so after a child is born, 40 days after they're born, the parents will bring the child to church, and on his first day at church, the priest will take the baby in his arms and he'll take him to the iconostasis, or maybe even behind the altar, and the whole church sings this song. Now, does that sound familiar to you? Have you seen this before, where the baby gets taken up to the first day of church? So that is the story of the presentation of Christ that we get to do and participate in, which I love. I love that about the Orthodox Church. When Christ does something, we do it too. The presentation of Christ, there's a part of that song that says, "A light to enlighten the Gentiles and the glory of thy people, Israel." So we talk about Jesus being the light of the world, right? When you go in, you light a candle, he is the light of the world. And he tells us in the Gospels that we are the light of the world, so that we should let our light shine. Okay, so when we have candles for the presentation, that's why we bring them, because of that song and the connection between Christ being the light. So for this feast day, we are going to make beeswax candles. Now, I have made these several times, and I'm going to tell you a tip that's going to make it so much easier for you, okay? So one thing I like to do, first of all, let's gather all our supplies. I'll even give my kids cookie cutters like you see here, so that they can cut out different shapes and put them on. They look really nice. First of all, we'll take the wick and trim it down to the right size. It should be just as tall as the candle that you want to produce. And to lay it flat on the edge, all the way to the edge. And we're going to take a blow dryer and just make it just a tiny bit warm. That's going to make it so that the beeswax isn't so rigid, and it's going to roll a little bit easier. Okay, so we heat it up a little bit, and then we're going to roll the beeswax very gently, as tightly as you can. Okay, now this is going to take a little bit of practice, but if you roll it, roll it, roll it, now you've got your candle, right? This is where you can get creative. You can add extra designs to the outside. You can even tie a ribbon around them. Whatever you choose, decorate them how you like them, and gather them all up and bring them to church. So some places in the world, it's actually called Candle Mass, the presentation of Christ. And the reason for that is because the tradition I was sharing with you. So that's a fun take on that. So if you're interested in any of the resources that I'm sharing about, I'll put them in the caption below so that you can find these as well. I hope you have a wonderful feast day. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe to Patristic Nectar Kids so we can keep producing more videos like this for you. Stay tuned for the next episode. Bye!